Pixel Guidance!
Hello, this is Eric Nelson with Pixel Gaiden, and this month I wanted to talk about the new acquisition I talked about last month, which is the JVC XI. I'm doing something a little unique this time where I am recording the audio for this simultaneously with the video that I will post on YouTube so that people can see this kind of rare item for themselves on the video. So this will be all in one take. So I'm sure I will be hemming and hawing and making mistakes, but I'm just going to power through this and talk a little bit about this machine. So if you didn't listen last month, the way I acquired this is when Tim was here in town, I stopped off at my local retro gaming store, and basically I've developed a rapport with him. The place is called Legacy Toys and Games, and I asked him if he had anything interesting in the back. It's kind of the secret password. And he brought out 2 or 3 things, and the one thing that leapt out was the JVC XI, which it was completely covered in dirt and dust, and it was just the unit itself plus a power supply, quote unquote. The reason I say that is that when I grabbed the power supply and shook it, first of all, it wasn't an official one to begin with, but when I shook it, all the parts inside were loose. So I didn't use that at all. So what I got was this unit right here. It is the JVC XI. It is cleaned up quite a bit, obviously, because I've been using it and testing it, but getting ahead of myself here. So Tim and I made the deal, and got a very good deal for this, and brought it home. And basically, and then, I'm sorry. So before we went home, we went to a couple of other little retro stores and were able to get a power supply. We found one locally. This unit takes the same power supply as the Genesis 2. So the Genesis 2 system, it is the same power unit for that. So I was able to get that pretty easily. And then when we got it home and plugged it in and tested it, it worked. The cartridge port worked right out of the gate. And of course, first thing I did was clean this up. I mean, I wiped the outside of it. I opened the CD tray, cleaned it inside and out, and then plugged a cartridge in the power supply in, and it worked. It worked like a charm. And then we tried a CD. So I burned a CD and popped it in there, and it did not work. And I expected that this system was, the guy at the Legacy Toys and Games told me that this system was untested. So Tim and I rolled up our sleeves, and we began kind of troubleshooting it. First thing we did was we opened the lid and cleaned the laser inside of it. The lighting on this video is going to be really poor. I apologize, but we just took a Q-tip and cleaned that lid out, or the lens, and plugged it all back in, and still didn't work. So what I usually do when I'm troubleshooting CD or DVD based systems is that I open the lid, especially PlayStations. When I opened the lid, I popped a disc in and then held the little button that tells the unit, hey, there's a disc inside of here. Did that, and it still didn't really work. We got it to work about 1 out of 5 times, and then even then it would just bail after it started the game right away. So I kind of knew that it was reading it. And so Tim and I were kind of scratching our heads, kind of wondering what was going on. And then something caught my ear when the disc was spinning, that I could hear kind of a drag on there. So this little thing underneath the lid, the little thing that spins around and holds the disc down, it basically was frozen. It was not spinning at all. So when you close the lid, that little plunger pushes down on the disc to make sure the laser reads it evenly as it spins. So grab some WD-40, popped it in there, kind of actuated that, which is a fancy word for I just spun it around a bunch of times, and tested it. Boom, that was it. Worked perfectly after that. Made sure the lens was perfectly clean and everything, and it has worked ever since. So um, just got a tremendous value on these because these are pretty rare. So I did do a little research on this system. First, I want to just kind of go over it. So this is a little bigger than the Genesis One, but not much bigger. It is a system that has the CD, the Sega CD on one side, and then a cartridge port for regular Genesis games or Mega Drive. If you're from Europe, there's two buttons on the top here. There is a power button and a reset button, and they're big, chunky buttons, which is pretty cool. And then making our way around here on the back, what I found really cool is then in the back here is the power, where the power supply goes in, but also a little port back here for the regular Genesis plug. So you can plug in like, or for AV for the Genesis. So you could just get a Genesis cord and plug it right into the back there. But the killer feature on this, which I think is really cool, is composite right in the back. So you have the yellow and then the red and white connectors right in the back. And then in the middle is a little audio connector back there. There's also a little where you can see this is a reduced model version, which I'll get to in a minute with some of the research I did on this system. But there's a little blank place where you could see that they removed a port, and that was an S video port. The Wonder Mega, which is the cousin of this, has an actual S video port in the back, which would be nice, but not necessary there. And then the only other ports on this thing, well, in the front, there's the joystick ports, two standard Genesis ports. But if we look on the other side here, some more interesting things unique to this unit. There's a volume dial right here, but there's also a headphone port, which is pretty nice. But there's also a microphone port, which is interesting. So the research I did on this is that this system was very good for karaoke, which was very popular in Japan. You could pop a karaoke disc in here, which actually it shipped with one, and you could do your karaoke stuff, which I think is pretty neat. And that's pretty much it for the ports around this unit. The unit is a pretty cool color. It's kind of a very dark navy blue, kind of. Hard to describe, but it's very pretty. So it's a very interesting system. So I did a bunch of research. I did it on the web, of course. Wikipedia didn't have anything on it actually, but there was some game like retro console wikis that I kind of gleaned some information from. One great YouTube channel that I took some of this information from was the Gaming Historian. If you look up the Gaming Historian, look up JVC XI. I got a lot of the information from him and his video. It was an excellent video. According to his video, only 10,000 units of this were sold. Now, I went to a couple other websites and there are varying numbers. So I don't know which one to believe. One was as high as 50,000 units. He said 10,000. I don't know if that's just United States. I have no idea. Basically, this is a pretty rare unit, though. I'd be surprised if it was as low as 10,000, especially worldwide. I imagine it's more than that, but it's still pretty difficult to get. This system released in 1994 for $500, which 1994 was, things were winding down for the Genesis as well as the Sega CD device itself. Sega had worked with Victory Entertainment to develop the CD or the audio portion of the Genesis. And because they had this relationship, they were given the license to kind of develop their own console. And they came out with the Victor Wonder Mega, which looks a lot like this JVC XI, but it had a lot more options, a lot more going for it. It was $600 at launch, though. And that came out in 1992. Much more viable time to release a system like that. And from what I understand, the Wonder Mega did sell pretty well, but it was still pretty pricey for what it was. And then they came out the Wonder Mega MR, I think it was. And that was kind of a cost reduced model. And it still didn't sell great. So they came out with this much more price reduced JVC XI. And when I say much more, it wasn't that much more because it was only like $100 less at $500. They removed a bunch of stuff, and it's still. You got to imagine that at this time, the Sega had also released in '94 the CDX, which does Sega CD and cartridge and is in a smaller format. From what I understand, the CDX, I don't own one, but from what I understand, it is a lot less reliable than this system or the Wonder Megas. These things are built like tanks. So I opened this up just to clean it out, and it literally just opens like there are no ribbons attached to the other side of the shell, if that makes sense. So when I opened up, it was very easy. Everything was laid out. It was very straightforward. So there were no surprises in there. Here in the U.S., it came with Prize Fighter, which was a game for the which was a Sega CD game. Came with Compton's Encyclopedia so that you could look up stuff in the encyclopedia. And like I said before, it came with a karaoke CD. One interesting thing about this, which the gaming historian does show on his YouTube channel, the 32X does work on this. So you plug the 32X right into the cartridge slot here. But the only problem is once the 32X is in, you cannot open the CD drive because as you can see, they're side by side. And it just won't open. So the 32X will work, but you cannot put a disc in there with that plugged in. Then there was the power base converter. It was the system thing that allowed you to play Master System games. That does not work with this because the shape. So you can't, the power converter has kind of this clip-on thing that goes in the back of the Genesis. Won't work. So you cannot use the power base converter on that. I just found I didn't know anything about this system until I saw it in that store. I had been looking for a Sega CD for a long time, trying to find one that worked, trying to find the right one that I kind of wanted. There was the big bulky one that fit underneath the Genesis. Then there was the CDX. I've never seen a Wonder Mega out there for sale. I knew of the Wonder Megas. I didn't know that this was kind of a cousin of the Wonder Mega, but there you go. I mean, I got a really good price for it, and I'm very surprised that it worked. Very happy that it worked. And I've been really enjoying some of the Sega CD games. I've just been having a blast with this thing. That's kind of become my daily driver. One last thing is when I was testing this system, I was using a standard Genesis controller because that's what I had. I probably have 2 or 3 of these laying around, and it works great on there. But the system did come with its own controller, which I very much wanted. So I went on eBay, kind of looked around. These things go for a lot of money, and I basically paid more than I should have for this. So I got a great deal on the unit itself, but I kind of blew that on the controller. But I did want the official JVC controller. As you can see, if you're watching the video, it's labeled JVC, but it is identical to the Genesis controller. There is really no difference at all. It is the same shell. Everything's the same. The only difference is the color of the plastic is the same kind of dark navy blue. And there's a big JVC logo right in the middle where on the Sega one, it says Sega Genesis. But I wanted a complete set. So I got this and it works perfectly. But I paid too much for it. So saved the money on the unit, lost the money on the controller. Anyway, that is it for my segment. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions on this JVC X, and it's kind of like an XI, it's kind of it's interesting. It's X and then a apostrophe and I in case you're looking up one of those. If you have any questions on that, though, please email the podcast at pixelguide.com or reach out to me on Twitter, and I'll try to do my best answering it. Anyway, thanks a lot for listening this month, and I will see you next month. Thanks.
I'll get you next time, Pixel Gaiden.